So how many people by show of hands don't know a lot about me or my spiel? I'm just trying to context the crowd. All right, that hurts a little bit more. All right, I'm gonna go very, very quick because that's a lower number than normal and I don't wanna spend too much time on something a lot of people know, but I think it'll matter. And then I kind of wanna navigate, and very honestly, spoke with the organizers beforehand, I actually wanna save, even within my time slot, even though I know we have a panel coming up, I'd like to do about 20 minutes of Q&A as well, because the truth is, you know, if you ask me how I think about the world, I think about it in very simple terms. Why in the world would you possibly want to buy what I'm selling, right? I have a very difficult time right now with what we're living through, because we're living through the great audacity of entrepreneurs and the great growth of fake entrepreneurs. We're living in a time right now, because the internet is so incredible, where everybody thinks they're entitled to start a business and it should be successful, because we're getting caught up in the hyperbole of things like Instagram and other things of that nature, and we're not looking at the raw data that 99% of these startups are losing millions of dollars in 24 months, and then they just say, they write a blog post saying, sorry, I gave it a good shot, and everybody thinks they're a hero. And I think that's great, because I'm a pure entrepreneur, and I do think everybody, if they have it in them, should be an entrepreneur. But I also think the same thing about being a great football player or an actress or a soccer player. I do think this is more of a talent, which gets me back to what I said to start this sentence. We are not speaking enough about value, right? We're not speaking enough about value. When I come and speak, when I schlep over here on a flight, when I'm asked and feel very flattered to come and speak here, the entire time I'm on the plane, the entire time in my hotel room, I'm like, well, why are the 70% of the people in this audience who've heard my talks many times before, or have seen my YouTube videos, or heard my one-liners, why are they gonna be entertained? Why are they gonna be interested? Why is it worthwhile? What value am I bringing? To the 30–40% of the people that just raised their hands, couple things. I'm fucking pissed at you for not knowing who I am. And number two, I feel very confident that I'm gonna be able to deliver quality for you, because you haven't heard some of this spiel before, and I tend to do good in that realm. But what I spend a lot of time on is what everybody in this room should spend all their time on. And that is, what value am I providing? Why should I be chosen to do work for somebody if I'm doing consulting or B2B? Why should somebody buy my stuff? Why should somebody read my book? Over and over, my life surrounds itself over one core narrative, which is, if I don't bring more value than what I'm asking in return, whether that's your attention, which is becoming more and more of the issue. Actually, I think the money part is becoming easier. I don't think it's the money. I don't think it's hard. You know, luckily we live in a world where a lot of people can afford a $20 book, or definitely can afford a free YouTube video to watch, but that time. How many people are familiar with Uber? Raise your hand if you're familiar with Uber, the iPhone app. Very nice. For the ones that didn't raise their hand, Uber is an app on demand. It's actually now making a lot of noise in Europe. I've been paying attention. I'm an investor in Uber. Blew up in the US over the last 3 years. It's on-demand black car taxi service. You open up your app, you hit a button, the car's there. It's actually more expensive in most markets than the normal transportation of a taxi, but it is completely on fire. And everybody is completely confused to why. Everybody thinks that it's cool, or that Uber is selling transportation. I'm here to tell you that Uber sells time. The one thing that I know that every single person here values after the health of their family and friends and money is time. And that's what I spend all my time thinking about. Catching a glimpse of the last presentation and kind of following the hashtag here today, we can talk about the things that I believe in, loving your community and giving back, this and that. All of that is tremendous, but the truth is, this thing that scares the shit out of me is that you don't have time. None of you in this room have time, and that is becoming more and more of the asset that you cherish, and it is completely dictating my marketing and how I sell and what I'm trying to do for a living as a business person, and kind of the thematics of all of where this has evolved. If you think back to everything we believe in, the people in here that have followed social over the last decade, half decade, we believe in do nice for the community, put out stuff that's value. If it doesn't give you goosebumps, fuck it. All that stuff, right? We believe in that. Why is that important? Because it's hitting ahead and this is something a lot of us were not paying attention to, and very honestly, something I wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to, is as we were talking about all these nice things, it's now not a nice to have. It is now going to be a must have. Because as this was all happening over here, something much scarier was happening, which is we now live in a 24/7, 365 world. There's a mixture here. There's some gray hairs in the crowd. I'm starting to get them too. There's some youngsters in the crowd. For the youngsters in the crowd, this may not make sense. But for the people that are 35 and older like me, do you remember when the workday actually ended? Remember when I used to think I was a workaholic. For the people that don't know me, I grew up in my dad's liquor store business. I once went an 8-year period taking 2 days off a year for 8 straight years and working by going to the liquor store at 7 o'clock in the morning and coming home at 10 p.m. every fucking day. That was my life. I deemed myself a workaholic, right? That guy that I was from 1998 to 2005 is lazy compared to who I am today. Not because I got more energy or better, because the world shifted on me. Because now, when I wake up at 2:30 in the morning to take a piss, I grab my phone and tweet back to somebody saying, "Thanks, bro." I mean, we have gotten into a world where when you get an email at 11:50 p.m. at night, people genuinely on the other end think there's a fairly good chance you may respond to them within 3 or 4 minutes. Let me ask you a very interesting question that's tapping into this psychology if you're not paying attention to it as much as I am. By show of hands, and I don't want your head nod, I've been schlepping here all for the last 14 hours, so I want your full hand to this question, and don't lie, because lying is the devil. How many people in this room, and you're not going to want to raise your hand if you're a proper citizen, but I need you to, because I want you to show everybody what's actually happening here. How many people in this room now actually get upset when another human being calls them? Raise your hand. Raise it high. Raise it high. Front row area, look back at what I'm looking at here. As a matter of fact, do me a huge favor. Can you stand up? Please, I know you're going to be lazy, but stand up if you actually, some of you are not standing up. I don't want this laziness. Stand up if you are a human being who now actually gets upset with another person calls you. I just want everybody to look around. We're looking at about 30%. Thank you, you can sit down, I appreciate that. It's good for blood circulation too, I saved it. 35% of the human beings in this room right now in 2014 actually are mad when somebody else calls them. Just think about how much the world has changed just in 5 years. When somebody called you, that was probably the height of a relationship that you had, right? We are now in a place, the reason these 35% of the people, and let's clap it up for them because they're pioneers. I'm clapping for them. They're pioneers because when I come back here in 36 months, 80% of you are going to stand up because what those 35% have realized that the other 65% have not tasted yet is technology is in a place where somebody shouldn't be bothering you on your time. How many people here have texted somebody else and said, "Hey, is now a good time to call?" Raise your hand. You're considerate human beings. The other bunch in this room, you're fuck faces. What's happened, my friends, is technology is changing the world in a way that, and look, I looked very careful. I did something very interesting. I had a little more time than normal on my commute to this talk. I looked at all the hashtags and I looked at a lot of your bios in the audience, and this is a very, look, if you're in this room, if you're here, if you care to be at this conference and pay attention to the content that they laid out, you are so much more ahead of the world than you probably realize. It's hard for you to actually take yourself out of the bubble you live in professionally. All your contemporaries are thinking about the same things. But the truth is, as a whole, you're dramatically ahead of the market. But even this room, including me, who fancies himself in knowing where shit's going, every one of us in this room is grossly, heavily underestimating what's actually happening here. The internet, which is about 20 years old, the consumer internet. And I know there's some nerd in the background saying, "Hey, actually in 1957, I know nerd." But I mean when normal people went on the internet. We're talking about 20 years, guys. How many people in this room remember the world pre-internet? You remember the world pre-internet? Staggering number. It's crazy to think about the world pre-internet, actually. I'm going for dramatic pause. We are living through the single biggest culture shift in human history. With all due respect to the printing press and other things that have come along, this thing that we got all lucky to be a part of, that much long, when our grandkids are long gone, when people look back at this era, we got lucky. Now, you know how it is, right? Like that Chinese proverb, interesting times, good and bad, and that's the truth. We're living through the second industrial revolution. We are seeing wealth being created that we've never seen before because the shifts are so great, right? We're living through a time where everything's changing so quickly that people are either scared or completely thrilled, depending on your DNA. But no matter where you sit on this, and no matter how you think about this, what this is all netting out to is a very simple game, which is, what do you do for a living, and do you provide value, and most of all, do you, whether you call it storytelling, whether you call it marketing, whatever you want to call it, the biggest thing that I'm here to talk about today is one simple thing. I've now spent 20 years of my life being professional. Before that, you heard the lemonade stands. What for a lot of you don't know here is when I was 13, I was selling baseball cards in the malls of New York and New Jersey, making $3,000, $4,000 a weekend. You're right, it was DNA. You know, it was just always there. And now that I've done this and I've done it successfully, I kind of look at the world, and now that I feel like I'm getting into an interesting part, you know, I've always been the whiz kid in the wine world and things of that nature, and now as I've become in a different chapter of my life, going to a different place where, you know, funny things are said to me, like when people roll up on me to take a selfie with me, and they're like, I watched your wine show when I was in junior high. I'm like, fuck. You know, like, okay. Getting a little older, there's something that I want to share with you guys. So, the variable difference to why I built the fastest growing liquor store in America, the reason why I invested in Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and Uber and Birchbox and made a lot of money, but more importantly, got access to watch how they navigated their first 5 years. For the last 4 years, and especially in the last 24 months, I've grown Vaynermedia, which is a social media strategy and creative shop I started with my brother. We've grown it from 20 to 400 employees in the last 30 months. And that company works with Fortune 500 clients like General Electric, PepsiCo, Dove, Unilever, big, big brands. So whether it's a big Fortune 500 company that I spend a lot of time now with, whether it's a startup that's gone from 0 to billions, whether it's the small business that I grew up in, whether it's the small businesses that I consult for or have friends or jam with people, I've tried to really take them all together and say, what's the one thing that makes Facebook work, but Plurk and all the other things that could have been Facebook not work, right? What's the one thing that makes Unilever or PepsiCo do well or not well, because there's only so much I can control in that world. What's the difference? What's the one theme that I can share with a room like this, no matter what the fuck you do in this room, whether you're B2B or B2C, or you're a startup, or you're a solo entrepreneur, music, radio, you sell t-shirts. The one thing that I'm completely convinced is the variable for success within this room across the board, from here to there to there to here. The one thing that is a common thread in my 20-year career that I'm now completely obsessed with, I started a $25 million fund in January. I'm investing based on this thesis. The one thing that I want every person to walk out of here with is, do you market in the year that we actually live in? That is the reason people are winning, and that is the reason people are losing. The reason companies are going out of business is because they're not marketing and executing in 2014. There's a lot of people in this room. So part of the fact that I wanted to context the room and looked at all your Twitter handles up there and looked at your profiles, I also then looked at your business's social presence to get a sense of what's actually happening here. And so the question becomes very, very simple. The truth is, and I think a lot of you know this, whether you work for an organization or you do it for yourself, and if you do it for yourself, you know, it might be money, it might be time. It might be a lot of variables to why you aren't executing to the best of your ability, to the knowledge you have of how to storytell or work the market that we actually live in. But here's what's happening, my friends. 99% of businesses from beginning to end, from Fortune 1 down to guy and gal who start their business yesterday, that whole variable, 99% of businesses are not marketing in the year that we actually live in. There's a lot of people in this room, when I looked at the Facebook pages and the web pages, tons of your web pages in this room are not even mobile optimized. They're not even responsive in a world where more than half the people now consume content in a mobile world. Yet you're here, so you know. So there's factors that are stopping you. It's either money, or it's time, or it's lack of education, or it's laziness, or it's the scariest one of all, romance. I'll get into that in a minute. But whatever it is, and by the way, the funniest part is, me too. Me too. We all do it. The big variable is this. I sit in rooms with companies that are spending $20 to $50 million in marketing in a year, and they're wasting it. They're wasting it because they're romantic. They're wasting it because they're used to doing it one way. How many people in this room now watch television? And here's another theme, on your time. Meaning, how many people in this room do not watch outside of sports when you're watching your program TV, you're watching it on your time, meaning you're watching it on whatever you guys have here. What do you guys call it, DVR? What's that?
Sky Plus or iPlayer.
Great. You're watching the show when you want to watch it, not when it actually airs. Raise your hands. Oh, good. Everybody. How many of you are fast forwarding every single commercial when given the option? Everybody. Meanwhile, my clients are spending tens of billions of dollars to tell you a story in a place where 2014 technology has taken you away from being able to actually see it. I landed in Manchester's airport. I drove 1 hour and 15 to be here. 7 years ago, if I was giving this talk, since I was awake and I can't really sleep in a car, I would have looked out the window and seen the beautiful countryside and all the things I would have seen. You know what else I would have seen? A fuckload of billboards, right? 7 years ago, in 2007, I would have seen a bunch of billboards. In 2014, you know what I did? I looked at my goddamn phone for the entire hour and 15 minutes until I got to the hotel. I actually have no idea what the world looks like between Manchester and this fucking place. None. So what does that mean? It means I actually am not against print or radio or television or outdoor billboards. I'm not against them. I still think that people, maybe my phone ran out of battery and I would have looked outside, right? I still think that things happen. I still think that some of these things do penetrate you, but there can't be a single person in this room who thinks the value of traditional media is worth the same money today that it was 10 years ago. Because the one thing that we're paying for, the one thing all of you are paying for, the other thing we're connected by is we're battling for attention. Before you tell me how great your app is, or B2B service, or your book, or your sneaker, before you tell me how great this fucking product is, you've got to get my attention to tell me that. And right now, getting attention has gotten really, really hard, right? And more importantly, we don't have time or patience or acceptance anymore for when somebody stops us from doing what we want to do to interrupt us and tell them about our shoe. We grew up in a world for the last 75 years where, you know, if you wanted to watch a television show, it went to a commercial, you sat there. Look, 30 years ago, there weren't remote controls in a lot of homes, 40 years ago, right? You sat there and watched your favorite show in the 70s, 80s, and it went to commercial, you consumed that commercial, right? So, banner ads. How many people here have done banner ad marketing in their career? Raise your hand. Great. Check this out. In 1995, when I started doing banner ads for WineLibrary.com, I was getting a 20% click-through on banner ads. 2-0, not 0.20. 20.0 click-through ratio. You know why? Because marketers hadn't ruined banner ads yet. It's what we do. Remember email marketing? Right? How many people here have done email marketing in their career? You ready for this fucking doozy? 1996, 400,000 people on my WineLibrary.com email list, 89% open rates. Yeah, if you're 35 now, you're a hero. You're a hero. Why? Because for some of the old timers here, you guys remember like I do, In 1995, 6, 7, 8, 9, we read every word of every email. That's what we did. Now we delete everything because it's all spam, 90% of it, right? Marketers ruin everything. And by the way, when I had 100,000 people following me on Twitter versus the million plus I have now, and I tweeted something, I got more engagement in 2008 and 9 than I do today because the attention was there and the depth was there. My friends, the single biggest problem right now in marketing and business is that everybody is so obsessed with width. Width is what we value. How many impressions can I get? How many people on your list? How many followers do you have? Width. Nobody is spending enough time on depth. If there was one person in this audience right now, I would be giving you this same fucking talk. Because for me, it's about depth. Because for me, depth is how you build long-term real businesses. Depth is how you win. If width worked, Zynga and Living Social and Groupon would be the biggest companies in the world because they figured out how to buy customers and build width. The reason those companies have struggled over the last 3 to 4 years is they didn't understand retention. They understood acquisition, but they didn't understand retention. And so we're living in a time right now that's very interesting because you have to understand the psychology of human beings. Bless you. You have to understand the psychology of human beings. In a world now where numbers are public, we get caught up in that game. In a world where we can show our Twitter followers or our Facebook followers, do you know that the average 14-year-old girl in America spends over 2 hours on one Instagram photo that she puts up? Because she puts it up, first of all, she takes enormous, anywhere between 8 and 20 minutes to get the lighting just right for her selfie, right? But that's not where her time is spent. It's way more fucking interesting and way more scary depending on which way you want to look at it. Where she spends her time is when she posts it. If that picture does not get enough likes within the first 5 to 7 minutes, her self-esteem is wrapped up in that engagement number and she takes it down and retakes another one. We're living through a very big culture shift, one that we are grossly underestimating. One, in a world where we're not talking about 15 minutes of fame anymore. We're talking about everybody has 15 people that think they're famous. And that dynamic is a huge shift. When we become creators, not just consumers, it changes the paradigm shift, right? It also affects something very important, that thing I talked to you about earlier, attention. When everybody's producing content and the cost of entry to produce content is 0, it's just time. Because the platforms like Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat have mass reach. None of us could have started a TV network or a newspaper 25, 30, 40 years ago. We didn't have the money to build all that infrastructure. But the internet, with these apps that have all the users on it, has been built for us, and all we have to do is do the creative, which, oh, by the way, every day that goes by becomes less expensive because we as human beings value authentic creative over overproduced, thus the cost can be 0. And so, my friends, what I come here to tell you is this. I really don't care what you sell for a living. I really don't. And very honestly, it actually doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're B2B. It doesn't matter if you're an artist. It doesn't matter if you're a student. It doesn't matter if you're trying to do this for a nonprofit. You know, nonprofits. Anybody here in the NGO space, nonprofit business? Great. So I'm fascinated by that space. I would tell you, out of all the industries that do social media the worst, I would say it's nonprofits. It is unbelievable to me in a world using my terminology. If you go map the top 200 nonprofits on social networks right now, 95% of them are throwing right hooks on every single post. The amount of people in the nonprofit space that hit me up daily asking for money or for me to tweet without even saying hello to me is staggering. Because they have the audacity that because they're a nonprofit, they deserve to be able to go in for the close. Not in a negative way, it's the structure. And that same DNA is something I want to talk to all of you about. Just because you have a business, just because you have a service, entitles you to absolutely zero customers. And if you ask me what I see the biggest flaw in all the startups and the entry-level people or the people that are doing, maybe they've been in corporate but doing their own thing for the first time, there is a stunning misnomer across the masses that you're entitled to any customers when you start your business. You have to earn every single one of them. And the only way this room and this country and this world is going to earn customers is by a very few core principles. Number one, are you proud of what you're selling? A lot of people tell me they hate being a salesperson. I actually think salespeople, the purest ones, are the best people in the world. I really do. When I sell my stuff, it comes from such a fucking great place. I feel very good about do you know how great I feel about myself right now standing in front of you? I truly believe I'm giving very good advice. Oh, by the way, and I'm also very realistic. I come here today to affect one person. The kind of marketing that I'm looking to be done and execution I'm looking to be done is hard. It takes a lot of time and a lot of discipline, and it takes something that 99% of you in this room do not have. The one word I love the most. The one word, if you look at my frantic energy, you'd never think I have, but is the foundation of my entire success. The thing it takes is patience. And that is something that is lacking heavily in this fast-paced world, which is becoming a detriment to a lot of the businesses in this room. And so, a lot of people say they hate selling. You know why? Because I know as I sit here, without knowing any of you, I know that 40, 30, 25% of you in this room don't even believe in what you're selling. You do not believe in your product. It's just the way it is. So that's number one. You have to believe that what you're selling is worth its money. Is your product and service worth it? And I'm not talking about putting on blinders and looking at it at itself. The amount of people that don't look at the competitive landscape. Somebody came to me the other day and Gary, my social media agency is not doing well. Yours is doing so great. I've been a fan of yours. I talk about all the same stuff, da-da-da. So I sit down with him. I get into that once in a while. I get caught, and I have no time. And then I get really pissed. I'm like, who the fuck is Don Thompson? And then I look, and my assistant has the tweet where I'm like, yeah, I'll give you 15 minutes. I'm like, fuck you, Gary. Anyway, so Don Thompson comes in. I sit down with him, and I'm like, he tells me all his stuff, and it feels very fluffy, to be very honest with you. I mean, I think one of the other things that a lot of people in this room should be thinking and talking about, I think we should be talking more about, which is the amount of fake social media gurus and agencies and people that are in the space right now is completely out of control. These are people that sold real estate or vitamins on the internet 5 minutes ago. So that's something that needs to be talked about a little bit more. So he's one of these characters. I don't begrudge him, but I'm listening to his pitch, and he's never sold anything in his life, right? And he's not a businessman. He just is opportunistic. He's smart in trends. He has this agency. That's fine, so I don't think the quality, but then what completely blew me out of my chair, and I picked it up like wrestling style and hit him with it, was when he told me how much he wants to charge. He was basically charging close to Vayner. We were putting 11 people on an account, charging $40,000 a month to a brand. This guy's putting himself in some intern and was asking for $30,000. And I was just I just laughed in a non-negative, I tried to make it as non-negative as possible. And I was like, bro, did you even context the market? Do you understand that one-man shops like you are $3,000, $2,000, $4,000 a month kind of businesses? And so it's not just knowing if you feel good about the price. What has been baffling to me, back to what I said earlier, which is the amount of fake entrepreneurs, it's all supply and demand, isn't it, right? You have to know what everything else is being sold for if you want to know what you're selling your thing for. So look, I'm very passionate about building businesses and telling stories. In this chapter of my life, I'm using this gift that I was given to sell stuff and make money and help my employees and help people that are willing to listen to me. I'm excited for future chapters in my life. I've started those things, whether it's going to be whether it's politics or to save the world or whatever it is. It's all the same game, right? It's all the same game. Do you tell your stories contextually properly in the places where people pay attention? I stand before you right now with no fear in saying, with zero hedge with what I'm about to say. Facebook, at this second, back to marketing in the year we live in, Facebook, on July, 8th, 2014, as you record this right now, Facebook July 8th, 2014 is the single best place to market, to sell stuff on the return on the dollar amount that you put in the world, period. Yet, here's the problem at hand. We now live in a world, and you guys know this, we live in a world where we have a bunch of headline readers. We read headlines. By the way, I've come to realize I do this too and other things. I now no longer get into any deep conversations around anything besides social media, wine, the New York Jets, and root beer. Period. I will have a lightweight conversation with you about healthcare, wars, politics, all these other things. But I've been listening to other people who think they know about social, and they read a couple of Ad Age articles and a couple Guardian articles and say, Facebook's bad now. Organic reach is down. Is Facebook even worth it anymore? And I sit there and I'm completely baffled because let me tell you what's going on here. Now, this is a new part of how I want to talk. I've been speaking for 5, 6, 7 years. Usually it gets people riled up, they're pumped, it's good, they're entertained. Now I'm trying to figure out how to add at least one very deep, tangible call to action that everybody can leave with. And now here's where I'm going with this part. My friends, if you do not know what a Facebook dark post, unpublished post is, you need to Google it and you need to watch the videos on Facebook or YouTube to learn. Facebook right now, perfect execution, is no longer putting out content to your community. It is to go in the back end of Facebook and to use Page Editor and to create a segment, a cohort, an audience that you pick from. Everybody in this room right now, for very little money in the scheme of things compared to Google or anything else that you can do, buying ads on the exchange or anything else you can do with no minimum, every person in this room can go to Facebook right now and market to every single person that is on Facebook. You can reach them in their newsfeed natively, not on the right side of their website, but in their feed with a piece of content that you reverse engineer from the cohort, the audience segmentation that you create. Let me explain. An employee on my paid team who knows that I'm an investor in Birchbox and Barkbox. Anybody familiar with Birchbox and Barkbox? Just curious. Okay, very good, small amount. Birchbox is a makeup of the month club. Right? You basically get, for 20 bucks or 10 bucks, you get a box each month with 7 or 8 different samples of makeup. It was a business that exploded in the US. They've done extremely well. Barkbox is the same thing. You pick the size of your dog, small, medium, large, and each month for 20 or 30 bucks, different toys and treats come. This is the way you get to explore new things for your pet. Got it? Really neat. Both businesses are doing extremely well. They did extremely well because they fucking marketed in the year we lived in, and they did target segmentation. So they went to Facebook and they ran ads against people who owned boxers, who owned schnauzers, who owned golden retrievers. They put a fucking golden retriever in the picture and they said Barkbox, and guess what happened? It worked because the only people that saw it were people that had golden retrievers. Understand? So, one of my kids, young kid on the paid team, learning this very simply, he's really into golf, he's a scratch golfer, good for him. Anyway, he started something called Bogey Box. It's a golf of the month box. All he did was target the right people, the amount of data that you can target on Facebook, including MasterCard data. Imagine targeting somebody who spends real money on golf equipment. Not likes a page, not theoretically goes to ESPN.com, so he must love bourbon. Not that shit. A human being who spent money on golf equipment. He is the one that saw the ad, and for 1,100 bucks, he ran ads, and he sold $40,000 worth of Bogey boxes, and the site didn't exist. The basic business didn't even exist. And that is what I'm talking about. How many people in this room and by the way, if you raise your hand, I'm probably going to jump out of the audience, ask you the name of the business, and if you're lying, I'm going to tweet out and blog post about how you're a fucking liar. So before I ask this question, I warn you because I'm a weird character. How many people in this room are actively, I would say, have run 20 or more Facebook dark posts for their business? Raise your hand. 1. So, this is the world we live in. We are at a marketing conference where people are into this space, right? that if you're here, you know what a fucking hashtag is, right? If you're here, you're paying attention. You've heard of me. You've heard of the other speakers. You wanted to be here to be educated. You're running your business in 2014. Yet, the single, #1, best tactic to sell stuff and convert and do business on the internet right this second is on Facebook dark posts, and one good-looking dude with a great beard is the only person in this room that is executing, and that, my friends, is the single thing that I think about every single day, which is you can throw as much hyperbole around. Let's care about our audience and the thank you economy and jab, fucking right hook and all this stuff. And the bottom line is, if you are not an executor and a practitioner, you will lose. You can talk to me about anything you want. You want to know what the ROI of a basketball is? For me, dick, 0. For LeBron, $1 billion. Please. If you came here with any audacity left of, is there any ROI in social media? There's ROI in anything that people pay attention to. But if you don't know how to use it, you lose. And that should be the conversation. Not debating what's the metrics we need and reporting to justify doing this. Do you believe that 300 million fucking people are looking at Instagram all day long? The answer is yes. Do you believe that 1 in every 5 people is on Facebook all the time? The answer is yes. Do you believe that people are paying attention to their phones? Let me help you. Yes. That is not the debate anymore. The debate is, are you fucking good at it? That's the debate. The debate is, are you good? And debating its validity, or if it's real, or if it's here, is ludicrous. The amount of disrespect I have for anybody in this room who does not realize in 2014 that social networks are sucking the attention of our end consumers that we're trying to reach, whether B2B or B2C. How many people B2B? Good amount. This is a good segue. My friends, I sold a $4 million client using Twitter and LinkedIn. Knew who the CMO of the company I wanted was, went to LinkedIn, found his name first, didn't even know, knew the company I wanted as a client, found the CMO's name, went to Google, typed it in, didn't even type it, fucking Control-C, Control-V, bitch, right? Added the word Twitter, found him, and started following him. This is where it gets interesting. This is where a lot of you need to start paying attention to your tactics. I didn't talk to him. I listened to him. Twitter is so incredibly good at one thing and so fucked up in another thing. Twitter wants to be like Facebook and push out. I don't use Twitter to push out. 91% of my tweets in my history of over 100,000 plus tweets, all of which I wrote myself, have been at replies to people to engage or something I listened to them say and jumped in for. Twitter's a cocktail party. You don't go into a cocktail party and start using your business card like a fucking ninja star, right? Like, I mean, and that's how I watch so many people use Twitter, right? They just come in and just pound. I'm following this guy, and this guy clearly grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, USA. He's a St. Louis Cardinals baseball fan, and he keeps talking about the same player, an up-and-coming second baseman rookie named Colton Wong. He just keeps tweeting about him. He's excited about him. I think his wife got him a jersey. And then I went to my fantasy baseball draft. And we do an auction so players get thrown out, we buy them. And then Colton Wong got thrown out. And I said, you know what? I'm not sure how good he's going to be this year, but I might use this as my opportunity. So I drafted Colton Wong. So I waited. Sure enough, he brought Colton Wong up 2 weeks later, and I jumped in this time and said, yeah, man, I hope he has a great year. Just drafted him on my fantasy team, right? That got us talking. We got into a conversation. I let it lie. 3 days later, Colton Wong went 4 for 4 in spring training or something. I tweeted that out. He jumped onto mine. We're talking. Then he looks at my bio, because that's what we do. And he's like, you're the CEO of VaynerMedia. I just Googled it. You guys are a big agency. He DM'd me. Took it private for the people that know how Twitter rolls. Led into a conversation. Said he was debating a new agency for his business. Wasn't happy with the social work that was done. Had affinity towards me because we shared a common interest that had nothing to do with business, gave us a pitch, and for spending 13 minutes of actual time of engagement up front to strategize my plan, and then about another 22 minutes of engagement in the upcoming month. It led to us to get a pitch, and we landed a $4 million piece of business by searching LinkedIn for who the person was that I could do business with, and then using Twitter to create context. And you can sit here and say it's creepy or brilliant or strategy or what the fuck, I don't care. What I care is that everybody in this room that's B2B, one more hand, that I know you B2B peeps. I know you, I get it. It doesn't seem as obvious how social works for you. I did B2C for a long time. I sold wine, billions of dollars, $1 billion worth of wine in my career to customers. I've now done B2B for the last 5 years in the agency world. This is with all due respect to B2B. Listen, I'm in it. It's easier. Let me tell you why it's easier. You actually know the name of the people that can buy your shit. Do you know how big of an advantage that is? It is ludicrous. It blows my mind that we have not had a more detailed conversation around B2B marketing and social. The ability for you to go map every single person that you're trying to sell to, then follow them on social networks. And I get it. Look, one in every 4 people have a profile on Twitter. One in every 2 for me so far have one on Facebook. Harder on Facebook, right? We know. They have to friend me for me to be able to get in there. And if they don't know me, that's not going to work. Twitter's the holy grail for this. But look, you may be marketing to 73-year-old decision makers, and they don't over-index on Twitter as much. 2 things on that. One, it's still, if you want to sell and be in business in 2014, you need to still do it and look up all 200 people. Number 2, got the creepiest, in some people's point of view, most brilliant in my point of view way. We just sold somebody in a B2B for a client by marketing to their kids. We found a guy. We had a bank that we were trying to get to for a client. The guy told me I'd never get to the guy. You know how I am already if you know me, and you're starting to get to know me if you're in this crowd. I love that kind of shit. I'm like, okay, dick, let's make a bet. We'll do a base retainer, and if I close them, you give me a 10 times 10x kicker. Because you have nothing to lose. If you get it, I did the math. You can afford this. He goes, okay, because it made sense. I found out who his kids were, this 70-year-old dude, and I marketed to his kids. And they were in their 40s. And then I even got into the grandkids a little bit. And I messaged them around and think about the guys, this is all strategy. By the way, I have never put out a piece of content in my life that is not strategic. I don't do things 'cause, right? It's all strategy. So I literally created content. We targeted them on Facebook. We knew what the town they lived in. We targeted people that we knew how old they were. We knew the town they lived in. And all the extra people that were seeing this ad didn't matter because if I could get them to share it with their dad and their dad to act on it, I won. Got it? So it didn't matter that there was no way for me to get too specific because they weren't on Twitter, so I had to go Facebook targeting because I knew the town they lived in. We targeted. The copy wrote, if you think your dad would be interested in this, share it with him. It wasn't super fucking clever. It was just effective. Finally, I don't know who it was, either the son-in-law or the daughter saw it, and he came to us. My friends, there's a lot of people talking shit about this stuff. I get it. But I sit in rooms every day where people are like, we need to be more like Red Bull or GoPro, or we need to be more like Uber and this and that. There are people that are executing. How many of you are familiar with Wish, the app Wish? Raise your hands. It's nothing scary. Download Wish if you don't have it. It's a shopping site, right? And it's kind of like they're going after like Walmart and Tesco. Like it's kind of not high end. It's not Wanelo or We Hearted or Pinterest. It's more like $3 pants and $8 pants. And there's a mix. But like, it's a very interesting play. It's done by 7 Google engineers that all worked on the Google AdWords team. Got it? Nerds. Fucking nerds. Right? Like when I talked to the founder, he didn't even look at my face. He was like, yes. It was very weird. So I'm jamming. They are killing it. Outside the US, they're killing it. They're number 2 in France, number 3 in Belgium. Overall app, like killing it. Selling millions of dollars worth of stuff. Do you know what their customer acquisition model is? Running 60,000 Facebook dark posts a day. So if the best Google AdWords engineers are spending their money to build their business on Facebook dark posts, you need to pay attention. And that's just Facebook. Wait till you see Pinterest's next new ad product. It's incredible, and people go on Pinterest to shop, or at least window shop. Incredible psychology, an incredible place to market. Instagram is the modern magazine. It is the magazine. Like, you can't link out from it, you can't do those things, but if you bought a Vogue ad, or if you bought a B2B ad in a magazine, if you ever thought a magazine ad would work for you, Instagram is that today. LinkedIn, for all you B2B heads, LinkedIn is well on its way to copying Facebook on this dark post campaign. So imagine your ability to do a piece of content that every single person on LinkedIn sees if they have a title in their job description as media planner or CFO of an industry that you're targeting. I mean, we're getting to tactical, surgical marketing. But the reason I wrote the book that a lot of you have in your hands right now is you can target the right people. You can target the exact right person. But if you don't get them to care about what you're selling, you've lost. So the craft of storytelling contextually, meaning I see food brands doing food porn on Facebook, and that's wrong because food porn on Facebook feels like an ad and everybody goes right by it. On Pinterest, you need it because the quality has to be high. You want to be a food brand on Facebook? Make it look like a normal person's picture of food. These are the psychologies that we have to start understanding, that if you are not appropriate in the room that you're telling the story, you might as well not tell it at all. We are living through the biggest culture shift of our time. I implore the people in this room to understand that if you are not an actual executor, a practitioner of this craft, it doesn't matter if you debate if there's ROI, you've already lost. So while we all talk about, like, people always ask me, Gary, somebody in here is going to ask me, Gary, how do you convince somebody in an organization, my boss or my client, one of you is going to ask this, it's probably fucking asked, how do you convince somebody about the value of ROI in social? And my answer is, I don't. I have spent the last 4 years becoming great at the Facebook dark posts and the hashtag hacking on Instagram and the understanding that primary red color in the bottom left corner of a Snapchat photo is more likely to get snapped and shared on Twitter, the science of creative in a social world. I've spent zero time trying to convince somebody of the ROI, because if you do not understand that there is ROI in the place where the eyeballs and the ears of our end consumer are spending their time, then you do not understand business, and or you have an emotional or financial reason that you're protecting the old guard, and that's just fine by me, because I can't wait till you go out of fucking business. Thank you.
Good.